Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, the William Shakespeare of fecal metaphors for sports failures, my brother Mike.
Hey, I got a gift when it comes to describing the way athletes um, defecate in their under britches. That's my gift. Not everybody has it. Not everybody gets one, but I've been blessed. What can I say?
Yeah. And how this hasn't turned into a lucrative
I
endeavor.
know.
You should be
Just
swimming
wait.
in
Just
dough.
wait until that
ESPN
becomes
should
like.
be begging to give you Stephen A. Smith money for this sort of thing.
I'd settle for I don't know, John Buccigross money or whatever they want to do. I don't need Stephen A. money. Just give me Booch money.
Yeah, one of these days they'll wise up. Anyway, on this week's episode, we're happy to have Mike back. He's playing through injury a little bit here, but happy to have him back to the show. Everybody hates it when it's just me, which we had to endure on the Mike's Dropped episode for Royals Weekly Substack subscribers. So on this Monday episode, having him back, we're going to look back at a wild week on and off the field for the Royals. Mike and I haven't had a chance to discuss the trade deadline at all. But if you followed along that day of the trade deadline, it was crazy out there. And then we're going to discuss the playoff chances for the team and what they might have to do to make a playoff push. We're also going to preview this week's games like we always do, and we're going to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to that Royals Weekly Substack, royalsweekly.substack.com. You get all this extra content. I talked about the trade deadline today in the weekly wrap up. We did Mike's Dropped. Did you see the bet that I put on the Mike's Dropped episode, Mike?
I did not. I was in the emergency room, so I didn't catch that one.
Right. You didn't catch that one. I chose Vlad Guerrero over 1.5 bases in that first game. And what does he do? He comes up in the very first inning and hits a home run. And so that one hit because I'm way better at this than you. And so, yeah, but subscribe to that Royals Weekly Substack. You get all this extra content for $5 a month. It's a great thing. It helps support the show financially because it does actually cost money to do this. And it does other sort of things that gives you a lot more Royals related stuff you can dig into. So do your best if you can to go ahead and do that. Also, make sure you're rating and reviewing us. We had 0 Apple Podcast reviews. I would love to read them. You might be saying, I don't listen on Apple Podcasts. Find a phone that has Apple Podcasts on it. Get on that phone and leave a review. It's not a big deal. Like, I grab my people's phones all the time. I can just leave reviews for us on there. Just do that. Okay. That's very simple. 5-star rating, 5-star review, whatever. It helps us out a bunch and we appreciate it. We'll start the review of last week with roster news like we always do. This segment is going to take a second because we had a lot of roster news at the trade deadline. That's where we're going to talk about all the big trade deadline action. It starts with the big one, the big ticket item. The Royals traded Freddie Fermin to the San Diego Padres for Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek, two right-handed pitchers. Mike, what are your thoughts on seeing the Royals trade away a beloved fan favorite, maybe my favorite Royal on the current team, for two pitchers to San Diego?
Yeah, you absolutely hate to see Freddie go because, one, he gave you just quality innings behind the plate, always seemed to come up with a big hit when the team needed it. Just a real workhorse for a guy that, had very little to no prospect status. But absolutely love this trade. Absolutely love it. It does so much for the Royals. You get two pitchers here in Bergert and Kolek that I actually like both of them. People aren't talking about Stephen Kolek that much. I like Stephen Kolek. I love the ground ball rate. It's 50%. The sinker's pretty good. I like the slider quite a bit too. I think he's got some potential. I think he could I think the Royals pitching staff will try to maximize how I say the Royals pitching staff, he'll be in Omaha to start, but maximize
kind of what today for Omaha.
Oh, did he? I like what he's done. He's had some success in Major League Baseball already. A lot of controllable years left still. Same for Bergert. But I like both of them. I think Bergert's probably maybe has more upside, but I think Kolek can be a guy that you kind of lean on as maybe that sixth guy or that depth that you definitely can count on, or maybe even at some point makes this rotation. Who knows? I think people are a little underrating Kolek in this deal, but definitely two guys that are both controllable for the long term. They help solve the depth issue, the starting pitching depth issue that this team has. And by the way, this team has this, and you and I talked about it maybe in the midweek episode. There's a starting pitching depth issue for the foreseeable future. Michael Lorenzen will be gone tomorrow or next year. Okay. You've had the injury concerns with
he
now.
Will probably be gone.
Probably, unless they choose to re-sign him.
Well, no, he has
does he have an
mutual option? It's a mutual option. $12 million bucks.
Now you don't have to pay that $12 million. Okay, if you're the Royals, because you've got these two guys. But after, we've seen there's not anything in Omaha. Okay, the closest guy that you maybe like is Ben Caderna, and he hasn't proven it above AA. And so, really important for them to get some major league experience guys that still have control and that have at least an arsenals to dream on. And that's, I think, very important.
Yeah, when I first read this, when it was first reported, it was just reported as Freddie Fermin for Ryan Bergert. And I thought, hey, this is a really good move. This works. This is great. Like the Royals need it. It sucks to lose Freddie, but they could really use a guy like Bergert. And then they reported that the Royals were getting Stephen Kolek as well. And I'm like, my Lord, this is a goddamn fleecing. We fleeced the Padres. And what's interesting is if you go look at their fan base, they're reacting the same way. They're like, what the hell? Like, we got fleeced. Immediate. Now, they don't know what kind of dog Freddie Fermin is, and they don't know like what he's going to give the team.
But and they desperately need catching help in San Diego.
They have the worst catching situation.
He's going to catch every day for them.
Yeah, well, not every day because he's a catcher.
Well, you know what I mean, but he's going
to be their primary catcher.
Innings for the rest of the year.
And so he's going to give them a lot. But the Royals so desperately needed pitching. People talk about like, well, if they're going to make a playoff run, their offense has to get better. They also have to be in every single game, basically through the rotation. They still have to be competitive in it pitching wise. They can't give away 2 out of every 5 games just on the fact that they're running out a nobody at starting pitcher, or the fact that they have to do a bullpen game. And so their bullpen is shot like 2 out of every 5 days, basically, and maybe more than that. And so you can't do that and expect to compete. And getting Bergert, getting Kolek, getting Falter, who we're going to talk about here in a second, shores up not only what their potentially biggest weakness is for the rest of the season, it also gives them 2026 and beyond stuff. It gives them a lot to work with there. And so when coming into the season, we noted that the starting pitching was a strength, but it wasn't necessarily a position of depth because all we could see in AAA was Noah Cameron. And 6 guys is not like tremendous in terms of like the depth that might exist. Now, that depth has really been tested this year. Injuries to Alec Marsh, to Kyle Wright, who we still have never seen pitch for the Royals, to, Cole Reagan, Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha, Chris Bubich. Basically everybody except for Michael Wacha has been on the IL for the starting pitching for the Royals. And so getting this situation taken care of in some way and leaning into your organization's best ability, which is the development of pitching, is such a huge win and such a smart strategy for JJ Picollo. It's like, oh, everybody thinks that starting pitching is your strength. Well, guess what? We're going to add to that strength. We're going to add value to Bergert and Kolek working with Brian Sweeney and the rest of the pitching development team to help make them, to help Bergert fulfill his potential as a mid-rotation starter, to help Kolek become a solid back-end guy, to help Falter do the same. Those sorts of things will create so much value for them that maybe you do have a glut of pitching later and you can trade from it next year or in 2027 or something like that if you end up having more pitchers than you know what to do with. But for now, they've just added a tremendous amount of value, trading away something they had too much of anyway. They have too much catching. Might as well trade some of it away and bring in something that you really could use.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. At the beginning of next season, they could have been in a catching pinch anyway, with Carter Jensen knocking on the door, and now Freddie Fermin is holding up a spot for Carter Jensen. That's tough. So and it's odd that you and I didn't really talk about Freddie getting dealt more, because it did make a whole lot of sense.
But we mentioned it every year because, backup catching is always valuable and always sought after. I remember mentioning it and saying, like, I do believe teams will be on the phone for Freddie Fermin. I just didn't have a sense. It's too hard to pick out who that's going to be. It was great to see that he's going to get a chance at a playoff run with the Padres. We've mentioned him once already, but the Royals also traded Evan Sisk and Callan Moss for left-handed pitcher from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Bailey Falter. Mike, what are your thoughts on seeing Sisk and Moss go and Bailey Falter come in?
Sisk and Moss are fine losing those guys. It's, I don't think either one of them is all that likely to be an above replacement level major leaguer or anything like that. Falter is, the one thing I like about what the front office did here with all three of these pitchers. They went after guys who have at least one pitch to dream on. Falters is the fastball. Left-handed fastball.
Burgert's is also a fastball, elite. To be clear.
Yeah.
Like, and they really, it looked like kind of went for fastballs.
Well, yeah, even Kolek's is the two-seam, is the sinker, the two-seam fastball. So, yeah, really good to see. It's another thing to dream on. Now, his other pitches lack a lot, I think. He's had some success this year, which is somewhat surprising with the pitch profile, but his expected numbers are much higher. But something to work with here. It's a guy you can go put out there and give you a competent start and feel like he still has room to grow, even though the Royals do not have as much control over Falter as they do the other guys.
Yeah, Falter, I still think under control till 2029, I believe. And so he's had quite a few years in Major League Baseball, but his service time is only, I think, 2 years or something like that. Yeah, Falter interests me because he feels like he's having a lot of success or some success at the Major League level without an elite arsenal, right? And so you're like, oh, well, if they could help make his arsenal even better, they give him even more of a chance to work on that, or to utilize that pitchability, utilize command and things like that, and get an extension. He has some of the best extension in Major League Baseball. What I find particularly interesting is this is more of that strategy of just get more quality arms to Sweeney and co. and let them do something valuable with them. But interestingly, Brian Sweeney was actually his pitching coach in the Philadelphia Phillies system at the minor league level. And so there's a specialized level of knowledge here that's like, is he seeing something in Falter that isn't being taken advantage of that he thinks he can bring in here and start taking advantage of right away? Right? Like, if so, that gives Falter maybe the ability. They saw it with Reagans. I mean, we've seen it with a few guys in this organization. Bubic. Saw it with Bubic right away. Like, he got hurt right away, but they also knew right away, we can make his fastball better in this way. We can have him drop the curveball and start throwing a slider. Like, all these sorts of things. And Bubic was night and day the first person who turned around from this pitching staff, right? Like, but Reagan did it as well. They did big things with other guys like Steven Cruz and some others. Like, I'm curious to see two things. One, what happens immediately with guys like Falter and Bergert and Kolek, but also after an off season, what do they look like going into 2026? Because as much as these moves are, we hope that they help in 2025, these are really moves for 2026 and beyond. And it's really exciting in my mind that they're going to have an off season to sort of help these guys develop in ways that could be useful next year and the year after that, and so on and so forth. The next trade was the final one of trade deadline day for the Royals. It came in just under the wire. They traded prospect Yunior Marte to the San Francisco Giants for Mike Yastrzemski, a 34-year-old outfielder. He's gotten to play in the last few games or since being traded over. Mike, what are your thoughts on getting Yaz and shipping out Yunior Marte?
It's a little odd to me that they gave up maybe their highest prospect that they gave up during the deadline for a guy that I think is maybe the least valuable of the guys that they got. But I get it. Yaz isn't my favorite hitter in the world, but he hits left-handed pitching, he hits right-handed pitching pretty well. And, he's kind of your complement to Grichuk. I get that. He's the opposite of that. I'm fine with it. He'll help. He hit a home run in at-bat number 1. That was cool. But I'm not expecting huge things from him. I'm just expecting him to come in, hit right-handed pitching, contribute a little bit. And, yeah, he'll give you more than what you were getting a lot of times. So,
yeah, that is true. It's fine. I'm fine with this trade. It's the only potential value loss trade of the deadline in my mind. Like, I don't see them value losing the Falter for Sisk or Callum Moss trade. I don't think they'll even come close to value losing the Bergert, Kolek, and Freddie Fermin trade. This one, there's a possibility that's a value loss. It's also the only truly short-term trade that they made. Like this Yastrzemski's contract is up after this year. This trade is specifically to try and win more in 2025. All the other trades are actually more beneficial and more long-term than they are short-term trades. Yunior Marte is a legit prospect. He's like 20th on the Royals top 30. He's having a great year in low A Columbia. He's 21 years old. He's got some potential as a pitcher. The Royals, though, if you're going to do something like this, and it's not always a bad thing to trade long-term value for short-term possibility, But if you're going to do something like this, you should trade from whatever you have a strength in producing or whatever you have a lot of. The Royals have a strength in producing pitching prospects, and they have quite a few of them right around the area where Junior Marte is. So they have David Shields, they have Kendry Churio, they have Hero Wyatt, they have Blake Walters, they have Kyle DeGroat. Those are for the 5 starters in Low A Columbia right now. Marte is getting moved. He had 2 choices essentially. He could move out of the rotation, or he could go up to Quad Cities. Those are the only options in the Royal system right now because they have this huge flotilla of promising starting pitching prospects working their way through the system, and a lot of them are in Columbia right now. And I watched that Kendry Churio start. It was friggin' amazing. The guy is amazing. And so there wasn't a lot for, they can move on from somebody like him because they have so many others just like him in terms of potential, if that makes sense, or even higher in terms of potential. So, it's a weird thing that could ultimately be a value loss, but if Yaz gives them a better shot to make the 2025 playoffs, it's not that huge of a deal. We'll talk about one other thing. The Royals sent Steven Cruz to the 15-day IL and then brought Daniel Lynch back to the roster as sort of a corresponding move to help in the bullpen. Mike, what are your thoughts on losing Steven Cruz and regaining Daniel Lynch?
Well, it certainly hurts because I think you and I, at least, and I think a lot of other people were kind of counting on Steven Cruz to be able to start taking on some more higher leverage, not necessarily the highest leverage, but higher leverage innings where it's, hey, the team's down a run and you really need to stay in it for an inning, or you need to bring somebody in to get a strikeout. And he's really struggled recently, especially with command. I'm hoping that this shoulder issue is both short-term and explains some of those command issues, because the bullpen's also not deep enough to where you can just lose a guy like a Steven Cruz, especially when you think of like, okay, I know we're getting Hunter Harvey back and that does help. And he looked pretty good today, but as far as top end stuff, strikeout guys, this bullpen isn't thick with them, and so losing Steven Cruz does hurt. Hoping it's more of a quick thing, but with a shoulder, you never know.
That's the 3rd shoulder out of this rotation too. Ragans and Bubic, and you worry sometimes that are they making some changes that are leading to these sorts of injuries, right? And I don't know if that's the case. That's total speculation, but you hate to see the same type of injury come around for multiple guys, or at least the same area. I can't really speak to the
This is an impingement, they say, not a strain. So we'll see.
So we'll see. But a lot of shoulder stuff for the Royals right now. It hurts because they'll need this bullpen at peak capacity for the next 2 months, right? They can't show cracks the way that they've been doing recently. And you were right, they have Lucas Erceg, who's got good stuff, but hasn't been as dominant since coming back from injury. Carlos Estevez is good, but not that dominant strikeout pitcher that you might think somebody would be at the back end of a rotation who gets paid $10 million a year. And so you would like them to have sort of a 4-headed monster instead of a 3-headed monster, and let sort of Cruz be the guy who can really get a strikeout if you need one, who can be that 4th guy that you're really relying on in situations like you mentioned, where you're maybe down a run, but the heart of their lineup is coming up and you want to stay in this game, right? Because you think you can maybe get a run in the last couple innings, right? And so it's going to hurt to not have him in there. Hopefully Lynch can help pick up some of the slack. He came in and pitched a clean inning today. He's not the strikeout sort of presence that Steven Cruz is, but we've seen him be effective in different ways. And so hopefully other guys can pick up some of the slack. Schreiber's been good recently. They're going to need those guys to step up and really fill in there. 2 other bits of roster news we're not going to talk about, but I thought we should mention. Nick Lofton was returned to the team coming off the 7-day concussion IL. And then also MJ Melendez was optioned to AAA as they brought in other outfield options like Mike Yastrzemski. On the field last week, the Royals continued their steady progress toward a final wildcard spot. They went 4-2 again this week, bringing their overall record to an even 56-56, back to 500, y'all. They've gained 1 game in that time on the final wildcard team. Mike, how do you feel about how the team played last week?
I thought it was solid for the most part. There is some kind of smoke and mirror stuff to that, but to see the offense still have a little bit of success in some games, love to see it be more consistent, but to see them, the guys produce that you really need to produce, the Bobby Witt Juniors, the Salvador Perez, the Vinny Pasquantino, I thought they were solid. it'll really be interesting as we get into this next series because we're going to get to see some of these guys, the Bergerts, and we're going to see Bergert and we're going to see Falter get to pitch, and that will determine, those guys will be a big part in whether this team makes the playoffs or not. So this next week is going to be a great indicator, but it was good to see him get some wins against, honestly, one really good team in Toronto and a team in the Braves that have a really bad record but do have some talent.
Yeah, the Toronto series was the one that gets me. I think you see a notable uptick in the quality of plate appearances from the guys. I mean, Jack is now out of the lineup because he's injured, and instead you're getting guys like Grichuk and Yastrzemski who, while they lack maybe some overall offensive talent, they give you good plate appearances. Same with Adam Frazier. That's a professional plate appearance from him every single time. And so you're seeing the bottom half of the lineup pick up some slack recently, and Kyle Isbell's just been hotter than crap, and we're going to talk about him here in a second. And that's helped the bottom of the lineup contribute a little bit. And then if the heart of the lineup can be, 70 or 80% of the sort of their production capacity, then that gets you enough runs to sort of be competitive and beat a quality team like the Toronto Blue Jays. Toronto is a very good team. They're leading the AL East. They are good. That's the first series I can remember us winning against a good team. Mike, can you name another series we won against a good team this year?
We beat Cleveland in a series.
They're not a good team. They don't count.
Team. Okay. Let's see. Gosh. Oh, we beat the Padres in a series, didn't we?
We beat the Cubs. We did beat the Cubs. This is also post All-Star break. We just beat the Cubs.
Yeah.
And so that one was good. Seattle, we beat them. That was pretty good.
So we've
done it a couple times, but we need to do it against the teams that are, for like the next 2 months, it's not going to all be bad teams. We got to win some series against good teams. If I broke down the math for you about, and I'm going to later, about like what they have to do in order to, ultimately make the playoffs, it's going to be tough. Mike, last week, a lot of winning, plenty of opportunity for strong performances. Who'd you choose for your strong performer?
Well, normally I just take the layup. Okay, I just go with whoever's been the best hitter that week. I'm like, I'll just take that person because I fill out the outline before you do usually. But this week I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this one to Mark because he's one of your guys. So I'm taking a different guy. Actually, a guy that I have been rather critical of in the past at times, but was just so good in a week when the bullpen won them a game in that Atlanta series because they pitched a full bullpen game and did phenomenal. The whole pen was good. I'm going with John Schreiber. He also pitched again today, or not today. Was it yesterday? I can't remember. He pitched a couple times in this Jays series too. It was really good. John Schreiber has been somewhat dominant. 3 innings pitched, 1 hit, no walks, and 5 strikeouts. And that was kind of the thing that you noticed in, I think it was that Braves series when he pitched, was he was getting swing and miss like crazy. The fastball was up to 95. The slider was really playing outside the zone, getting swing and miss on that. Like Schreiber was on one this week. And if he can be that guy moving forward, that's going to be great because they're going to lean on him even more. Q loves John Schreiber. And I was kind of thinking the other day, I don't know if I sent this to you or not, but as much shit as I give John Schreiber sometimes, there is not a team in Major League Baseball that wouldn't want John Schreiber on their team.
No.
Because he's going to be tough against, even when he's not doing great, he's going to be tough against righties. He's going to have a chance to give you a ground ball. And when he's also striking guys out, then you've got a really competitive dude that can kind of do multiple things. And he can pitch quite a bit. And so kudos to John Schreiber. We're going to need you for this run, buddy.
Yeah, and this is what he was during his peak seasons in Boston. He wasn't just a ground ball guy. They sort of talked about him like, well, he's a ground ball guy, blah, blah, blah. He was striking out 10 hitters per 9 innings back there. And he's back to that this year. He's back to sort of being that strikeout pitcher who also happens to get a lot of ground balls, which is a great profile to have because it's like, it usually means that you're going to get a lot of strikeouts, but also you're not going to give up a ton of home runs. That's also what that means, like in addition to that. And can get you out of tough situations with a double play ball and so on and so forth. The Royals have done a great job helping him get back to that, and he has done a great job sort of for them this season. That's why I thought he would be a valuable trade chip if they wanted to trade him this year. Thank you for letting me take the layup this week because I did want to talk about my boy Kyle Isbell as my strong performer for this week. He went 7 for 19 with 4 doubles, 2 RBI, 2 walk, 3 strikeouts, 2 stolen bases, 1 caught stealing. Seemed like he was coming up with a huge RBI hit every time they needed one. Like it's always coming down to him in the 9
including
spot.
in the 10th today.
Including in the 10th today. He also came up with a huge 3 RBI hit. I want to say that was in the Braves series.
Oh, okay.
When those in the Braves series, because I remember it was Profar who took the horrible route to the ball that allowed it to get all the way to the wall. But Isbell is he's on fire with the bat right now, and he needs to milk that for everything it's worth. I really hope he can continue that for the rest of the season. We've seen him have streaks where he looks like a fully competent hitter. He has since the All-Star break. Hopefully he can continue that and get sort of those offensive numbers up because he's kind of right there on the edge. Like the Royals are going to have to make a decision with Kyle Isbell. Like, can he be our everyday center fielder? Do we want to continue to employ him in some capacity, right? Because you're going to get great defense. We know that, and that's really important for the Royals, but you can't be a nothing with the bat. Right now he's rotational, and he'll probably stay rotational, but you would love it if you know that you can put him in against a right-handed pitcher and you're going to get around league average production with the bat and excellent defense. That's ultimately what you really want for a Kyle Isbell. Hopefully he can continue seeing the ball well, putting it in play hard, and most importantly, and this is why I like this week a little bit better, 2 walks this week. Got to learn how to get on base in other ways if you're Kyle Isbell. We see he has the bunting game. He's a great bunter, but I'd love him to be a little more selective at the plate and get on base a little bit more. Mike, it was an interesting week for finding weak performers. I'm going to be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Who was your weak performer for last week?
Yeah, it was kind of tough because nobody had a real bad week.
Nobody really had a real bad week.
Yeah, yeah. There wasn't like, oh, this guy was terrible. So I went with our guy Noah Cameron. 6 1/3 inning pitch in his 1 start. He gave up 6 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 hit batter, 1 walk, and one strikeout in those 6 1/3. You and I both kind of texted back and forth. Q probably left him in a little too long in that game.
Touch.
Probably should have just taken him out after 6.
His first 3 runs in that game, you'll remember, were like tough luck, dink doink kind of stuff. He did hit a batter in there, but like he wasn't getting hit hard at all in that part of the game.
It was all in that 3rd inning. But when you aren't producing swing and miss, it's tough to get out of those situations, and he just hasn't had the strikeout numbers that he did in minor league baseball since he came up. He's been able to work around it and was actually pretty good outside that 1 inning. But then that 7th inning came, and it was he led off, I think, with a walk or a single and a walk, so maybe in different order, I can't remember. But not worried. He's still doing great. He's way exceeding expectations, having a great year. Just would like to see him miss a few more bats.
Yeah, and I think he has missed a few more in the last, 7-8 starts or so, but he definitely was having trouble missing them last week. And I think that's sort of, as I was watching that game, I was thinking to myself, Noah Cameron will probably be the type of pitcher who, like, they talk about like a third of your games you'll have your good stuff, a third of your games you'll have your medium stuff, and then a third of your games you have no stuff at all. I think he'll be the type of pitcher who is, when he has his best stuff, he's getting those strikeouts, those swing and miss, dominant type of performances. When he has his medium stuff, you may not see that, but he'll still be effective, weak contact and that sort of thing. And then when he has his worst stuff, he might still be semi-effective. I would imagine I would be like what we saw in this game, where it's like, yeah, he gave up a few runs because he had trouble missing bats mostly. Not a ton of hard contact. Maybe he'll give up a home run or 2 here or there. But you're going to have essentially 2/3 of his outings, he's going to have trouble missing bats, right? Like,
yeah, it's the only thing that's going to get him, and it happened a couple times in this game, and he was lucky that the Blue Jays didn't take advantage. Every once in a while, when he doesn't have his greatest command, that curveball is way too in the middle, and the changeup is also left there. That's when balls leave the park against him.
Yeah. My weak performer this week, I had to choose one, but I don't really see him as a weak performer. He doesn't have great numbers this week, but he did some good things this week. That's Adam Frazier. He went 5 for 23 with 1 double, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, 0 walk, and 4 strikeouts. But he had a lot of good professional plate appearances. He played some good defense in spots, ran the base as well. To me, this is exactly what you actually signed Adam Frazier to do, basically, is to go up there, provide good plate appearances, be clutch in certain moments, hit well with runners on base. And he did that, put some balls in play hard during the Toronto series that didn't fall and things like that. But I really had to choose somebody, but I have no complaint with what Adam Frazier did on the field last week, honestly. Mike, with all that's happening, so much stuff, the Royals getting back into it or trying to really hard. What are your thoughts on a theme for last week?
Ooh, I went with a 90s classic. I think it's the 90s.
I think it's early 2000s.
Is it early 2000s?
But I don't know. I'm going to want you to sing it either way, so go for it.
That cannot happen right now because I'm infirmed. I'm afflicted with some issues in the stomach area, so I can't sing this one. Not only can I not do it, it would be a disservice too. I can't remember her name.
Her name is Amy Lee, and she has an amazing voice.
She has a very amazing and powerful voice. But it's from the classic song from Evanescence, "Bring Me to Life," and that's the part I'm using here. "Bring me to life," and that's what the Royals feel like. It feels like they're doing by winning these series. They're slowly inching back into a place where you're excited to believe in a playoff run. What will they do when they get to the playoffs? That's a little debatable. But
if they get to the playoffs,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like they're making you want to believe again that's a possibility. And we'll talk about that possibility a little bit more here in a second. And I'm sure you'll poo-poo all over it because you're Debbie Downer. Okay.
No.
But bring me to life, Royals. I love to see the win, the late inning wins. Those are all great.
See, I feel like there are so many Royals fans who all they know is like drinking hopium for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that like they can't recognize a realist when someone's just speaking to them. So when I say the Royals have a 10, 11, or 12% chance of making the playoffs, I didn't invent that. That's just not my internal pessimism, right? Like
you just hate the boys.
Saying, right? Like,
you hate them.
And then this is what pisses me off. I hope they make the playoffs. I'm stuck in a bind here because I'm realistic about it. I have to say, like, I have to tell people the truth, which is that these are their odds of making the playoffs, right? But what will inevitably happen is if they make the playoffs, somebody will come back at me like, "You never believed in them. You never do blah, 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 blah," all this crap. Like
that would be me.
I know. That's what's hilarious, and it fucking drives me nuts when people do that. But what it does is on social media, at least, it creates a list of people for me to block, and so that's nice. But anyway, my theme for this last week comes from a very hopeful place. Honestly, it's from a character named Andy Bernard on The Office, played by Ed Helms. And this line I know was specifically written by Greg Daniels because I actually saw a clip of Ed Helms talking about this line the other day. And he said that it was written by Greg Daniels, who created The Office, the American Office. And the line is just, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." And that's how I'm thinking about right now. Because I don't have high expectations that the Royals will make the playoffs, because I understand the actual odds of that happening, every day feels like a good day, kind of, because I'm like, yeah, more wins. Let's win. Let's do it. You know, like I'm in some way dispositionally prepared for a big playoff push because I'm not expecting it, if that makes sense. Like it feels very exciting and hopeful to me because I know of how improbable it is, right? Like, and so if they ultimately go on and do it, if they ultimately push on and make the playoffs, I'll know that I was in the good old days this entire time because of how realistically I was looking at their chances. If that makes sense. Royals Weekly is brought to you by All in Physical Therapy, who are happy to announce that they now offer strength and conditioning programs for youth athletes who want to gain an edge on the football field, basketball court, or baseball field.
I just want to gain an edge getting out of bed in the morning. I'm like Grandpa Joe over here.
You look like Grandpa Joe.
Of course, feel like Grandpa Joe.
Of course, All in Physical Therapy still offers the best in recovery from total joint surgeries, sports injuries, with offices in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Belton. They'll help you take care of your recently replaced hips, knees, shoulders, elbows, you name it.
New hips will make my Shakira impression more than just an obese man in a halter top.
Yeah. If you're interested in reaching the peak of your athletic performance or getting back to 100% from an injury, check out All in Physical Therapy at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com. Or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300. Now that the trade deadline is behind us, there's nothing really for the Royals to do other than just win games. That's what they got to do. They took modest steps to change their slim chance at making the playoffs for that to pay off, they got to win more games. And they got to win more games at a higher rate than they have in the past, up to this point in the season. So they're 500 right now. They got to win games at a higher clip than that. They have 50 games remaining as of today. Right now, the team in the final wildcard spot is on pace to win 86 games. That's Seattle. That means the Royals need to win 60% of their remaining 50 games in order to have a shot to make the playoffs, probably. In other words, they need to go 30-20 in the remaining 50 games for a chance at the playoffs. Mike, looking at the schedule they have for the next 2 months, do you see a realistic chance for them to make it?
I phrased it this way. It is just on the underside of reality, meaning, is it a reasonable chance? No. Is it realistic? No, not quite. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Okay, I'm going to say it is definitely possible.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of the dreams.
Of dreams. Okay, some things are in their favor. There are quite a few series against teams that are not going to be in playoff contention, but it isn't a complete puff schedule. You get the Tigers twice, the Rangers, the Phillies, the Mariners. These are all teams that are going to be in it to win it. You have to go like 500 in those series and then take advantage of the ones that are not those teams. And so it's going to be tough going, winning 60% of your games for that long of a stretch is not easy, especially when you're a team like the Royals, who has not done that so far at all this year. But it is possible.
Yeah, they'll need some things that weren't going their way early on to go their way. I think today's game is actually a great example of this. Today's game is a game they were losing earlier in the season, Mike. Did you get that feeling when today's game was nearing its end? I was like, okay, I know that in the first half they would have lost this game, right? Because something bad would have happened, right? Or they would have just been completely inept in extra innings getting that runner home from second or something like that, right?
Yeah. The base running mistake that the Blue Jays made where they got the guy thrown out on the way to home, that's the mistake the Royals would have made.
The Royals would have made. Yeah, that would have been the Royals' mistake, right? And so they're going to need some things to break their way, right? They had it happen today. The Blue Jays kicked some balls around. They played some bad defense in extra innings, which is unusual for a team that has very good defense in the Blue Jays. And so they're going to need those types of breaks. Yeah. They're going to need those types of breaks, right? They're going to need good breaks to go their way, which they weren't getting for the first half of the season. If that happens, then what becomes the underside of reality, and I agree, it's a long shot at this point. You're talking about long shot odds here. But this is sports, and everybody knows sports narratives are all about long shots making it. And so somehow people think that that's likely. But no, if they make it, it will be a long shot, and it will be a great story, and it'll be awesome. But they kind of need some things to go their way. And we're going to talk a little about what those things are going to need to be. But Mike, just real quick, you've seen 2 months of their schedule. Where do they need to make hay in this schedule in order to have their best chance to make the playoffs?
They got 2 series against the Twins, 2 series against the White Sox, and 2 series against the Angels. They need to come out of those with real big numbers. I'm talking.
They need to win all those series.
You got to, not just win them all. You got to sweep a couple of those things. Okay, you got to get a sweep in at least probably 2. That's 6 series. You probably need to sweep 2 of them, and then win the others. Make the hay then, and then that affords you the chance to go basically 500 against those better teams, and still give yourself a shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, there's a stretch coming up in about a week and a half that includes some of those teams. It's a stretch where they're going to play the Twins, then the Nationals, then the White Sox, and then the Rangers. That's going to be an enormous stretch for them because the Twins, Nationals, and White Sox represent a great chance to win a lot of games. And then they have a 4-game series against the Rangers, who are currently in front of them in the wild card, right? A 4-game series at home against the Rangers. If they can kick ass through that Twins, Nationals, White Sox series, that run, and then take 3 of 4 from the Rangers at home, that will put them in great shape to continue to make a run, right? Then they got a chance, it feels like. But if they really play well during that stretch, that's a good chance for them.
And I will throw in there, the last 2 series of the year are against the Angels and the A's, 2 teams that will not be playing for anything, that if their best players have a hangnail, they won't be playing. If you're within 2 games at that point, you got to dominate those last 2 series.
It doesn't seem like there are really any bullets left in the gun for the Royals to fire. This is basically the team that they're going to be playing with, Mike. But do you think there's anything they could do to try that they aren't currently doing, or try that they aren't currently trying, to reel off some wins and gain some momentum?
I don't really think that there is, because there's just not, when it comes down to that, it's post trade deadline. It's, you're not going to find a lot on, of guys that are going to be available in any way. The only thing I can kind of think of is if Jack gets healthy and has made a meaningful adjustment, you might be able to work him in some advantageous situations to see if you can't capitalize on that power and then get him more comfortable. And okay, the changes are real, and we can get 225 out of Jack Caglione with the power there to produce some offense there in a corner outfield or as a DH. But I just don't see. Other than that, I don't see it. I wouldn't do something risky like bringing up Carter Jensen to have him stumble the way that Jack did when he's been up here. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't risk that for next year. So,
yeah, we've seen how difficult it is to make that transition from AAA to major leagues for a hitter. It's going to be a little smoother for a pitcher, but for a hitter, that's a really, really tough transition. I don't think you want that for the team. I don't think they want to sort of sit there and watch Jensen struggle. Now, if they had an injury at the catching position, they would basically have no choice but to bring up Carter Jensen if they want to still compete, but you don't want to bring him up at 21 years old, 22 years old and say, hey, try and transition to Major League Baseball while we're in the thick of a playoff chase. Like, that's not ideal for anybody. And so that's a bad idea. I think you're right. I think they don't have many guns or many bullets left in the gun. I don't think there's not a lot they can do. They will get, of course, Lorenzen and Reagans back, and that will probably help. But I think they found the lineup that they want, really. I question sometimes about having India lead off versus, say, Michael Garcia or something like that. But I don't think they're going to make that change just because I think they like Garcia hitting in the middle of their lineup and giving them some consistency in the middle of that lineup. And so for now, I think they're just going to have to live with the lineup that they have, and for the most part, the pitching staff that they have, and see what happens. Final question on the topic, Mike. What are the keys then? If the Royals are going to make the playoffs, what's it going to take? Finish this sentence. The Royals make the playoffs if.
Caveat, injuries aside, the Royals make the playoffs if the offense can consistently produce. I think the moves that they made to shore up the rotation, I think they're going to work out pretty well for them. It'll all boil down to, can that offense consistently produce runs more than what they were doing in April, May, and the beginning of June?
Yeah, I'm going to finish that with sort of on the flip side of that, because we got to talk about the pitching. The Royals make the playoffs if they can get rotation after rotation that keeps them in the game. So if you think about, they're going to go through their 5-man rotation, another 10 times, basically? They're going to go through their 5-man rotation another 10 times. They need 5 out of 5 nights for the rest of the season where pitching keeps them in the game, right? 5 out of 5 nights in those rotations, they got to be in the game. You can't have a consistent, 1 out of every 5 of those games, we have a blow up and we just lose, right? Like, if that's the case, you're not making the playoffs, right? Like, because you've now lost what? How many games is that? I'm not a math major.
1 out of every 5, 10.
Yeah.
It's 10 games.
So that's 10 losses, right? Like, right there, the best that they could do would be 30 and 20. They're not doing that, right? Like, or no, it wouldn't even be that. I'm not good with math, but
the best they could do would be 40 and 10, but you're not going to win every other game. So
yeah, you're not going to win every other game. Like, 5 out of 5 nights, they have to be in the game. Okay. And so if they can get that level of consistency from the starting rotation, then they have mathematically just a chance to produce enough runs. Obviously, they won't score 7 or 8 runs every single game, but if they get consistent pitching performances, then they have a chance to win those 3-2 games too. Then they have a chance to win 3-4 games. You have to win some of those, and you can go out and win the 7-4 games, the 6-2 games and stuff like that. But 5 out of 5 nights, they need to have a chance to win whatever game they're getting offensively. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Do you have the same fantasy we do, retiring to a land of eternal summer? If so, you need to call Eric Oxer of West USA Realty pronto. He can help you transition to a lovely home in the Phoenix area and a life of fun in the sun.
When I think of desert fun, I think about meeting lizards and becoming friends with them.
That seems so much fun to me. I don't know.
Doesn't it? That's a Disney movie waiting to happen, baby. Mike and a lizard friend.
Should be called that too. Eric was one of the top real estate agents in the Phoenix area to end 2024 because he gives all of his clients a personal experience focused entirely on their needs. With Eric Oxer of West USA Realty, it's not about him. It's about you. He's there to listen to you, work for you, and guide you through the ins and outs of buying in the Phoenix area.
Phoenix is like Ana de Armas, hot as hell and full of spicy Latin food.
Delicious Latin food down there. Find Eric Oxer of West USA Realty online at ericoxer.com. That's ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just give him a call or shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. If you're at all interested in what a life in the Phoenix area might hold, let him make the experience all about you. The Royals continue an extensive road trip by traveling back to the United States for a 3-game series in Boston before a day off, and then more travel to Minneapolis for a series against the Twins' AAA team, I assume. I don't think they have a Major League team anymore. Mike, tell us about the boys from Beantown.
Beantown. They are right in the thick of the playoff run as well. The Boston Red Sox are 62-51. Second in the AL East behind the Blue Jays. First wild card spot is the one that they are holding on to right now. That first game, we're going to get to see the newly acquired Bailey Falter versus Brian Bello.
I was wondering if we got
required to say it that way.
If you didn't do that, I was going to do it.
If you get that reference from the, I want to say, early 2000s SNL, then you are a genius. Brian Bello is a 26-year-old righty out of the Dominican Republic, 3.19 ERA and a 1.28 whip. He's got a sinker that goes 95-96, a sweeper, a four-seamer, a changeup, a cutter, and a slider. High ground ball rate guy, 50% ground ball rate for him. He's got an expected ERA at 4.46, so if you can elevate him, you can get the ball in the air, you can do some damage against Brian Bello. Be interesting to see Falter, our first time seeing the lefty from the Pirates organization that we just traded for. Get to see another new acquisition in Game 2. Ryan Bergert will go in Game 2 versus Garrett Crochet, 26-year-old lefty out of the University of Tennessee, with a 2.23 ERA and a 1.09 whip. Saw Crochet a ton when he was with the White Sox, so we should be pretty familiar. Four-seamer that goes 96-97, a cutter, a sinker, a sweeper, and a changeup. His Savant page looks like Mao Zedong's pajamas. Just all red, baby. All red. It's all red.
Yeah, that's my joke. I wrote that. I'm very proud of it.
It's a good one.
Good one.
Hitters do best against this four-seamer. It's got a 345 weighted on-base average, but Garrett Crochet is a killer, ladies and gentlemen. Damn good pitcher. Going to have to do as much damage as we can against him and get him out early. In Game 3, it'll be Michael Wacha against Dustin May, the 27-year-old righty out of Northwest High School in Texas. 4.85 ERA and a 1.35 whip. If you remember, May was the very promising prospect for the Dodgers, so I believe we saw him against the Dodgers this year,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
I think we did, yeah.
I think we did. Sweeper, sinker, 94-95 on the sinker for Dustin May. Those are his two biggest pitches. He does throw a four-seamer and a cutter as well. Huge platoon splits for him. Lefties hit him much better. He throws the sweeper 41% of the time. Hopefully we can get the sweeper and the sinker out of that small ballpark in Boston. Mark, how the Twins looking now?
Hard to tell, honestly. Technically, their record
is Royce Lewis hurt again?
I don't know. He's only played like 7 games, but their record is 52-59. They're 4th in the AL Central. Offensively, these numbers aren't going to mean much, right? Because none of these guys play for the Twins anymore. And so, like, what I did was I just went ahead and started mentioning guys who aren't there. And so they have a 98 weighted runs created plus offensively up to this point in the season. That's 19th in Major League Baseball. One of the guys who helped them get there was Harrison Bader, who had a 118 weighted runs created plus. He is now gone. Another guy, Willie Castro, who had a 109, he is also gone, right? So two of their above average hitters are gone. They still do have Byron Buxton and Cody Clemens, who are both having good years for them. So they have some talent left in the lineup as well. But their pitching staff has been particularly weak this year, which is odd because the Twins have had a good rotation for a while. On the pitching side, they have a 4.28 ERA, which is 22nd in Major League Baseball. They traded both Chris Paddock and Joe Ryan, who have made the most starts for their rotation. The top two numbers of starts are Paddock and Ryan. They're gone, right? They've both been traded. They are getting another good year from Pablo Lopez, but they are going to be patching a lot of holes with guys with pretty young players in this game. So expect to see a lot of guys you've never heard of in this Twin series.
Bailey Ober's still there, right?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
We'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with the Just About Outside segment where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. Mike, you had a up and down week, we're going to call it. We're going to call it an up and down week. Go ahead and reflect on, I don't know, the meaning of life or whatever people reflect on when they're about to die.
That's one way to put it, an up and down week. So I had to go into the emergency room on Friday. Extended illness, wasn't getting better, was actually getting worse. I'd already been to see my doctor. My doctor said go to the emergency room. I was going to turn this into a diatribe about how awful the United States, not necessarily healthcare system, but insurance system is.
Oh, the worst.
Everybody knows that, though, I think, and I'm not going to go into that. Instead, I'm going to turn it around, flip it up to a positive. I want to give a shout out to University Health in Lakewood. It's called University Health Lakewood. I don't know. It used to be Truman Medical Center. It's in East Jackson County, kind of right in the Kansas City, Independence, Lee Summit area. I went to their emergency department on Friday, and I went at 8 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to tell me if this is any emergency room experience you've ever had. I was seen immediately. Okay, there was one other person there. Well, I've never been taken back immediately in an emergency room ever in my life. I've waited 6 hours in the emergency room multiple times before being seen. Things like that. I was taken back immediately. I was tested. I was given, medicine to make my immediate symptoms feel better almost immediately. I was in and out of that place. All the abdominal ultrasound that I had to have, and all the diagnostics and the everything, the doctor and all that stuff in an hour and a half. Nice. Boom. I was in and out of that place. Ran into a kid that we went to high school with, by the way. He works there. Nice. But it was just, they did an impeccable job, helping me and doing all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't an awful emergency room experience like I've had in the past. And so, shout out to them. Great work. I think I'm on the mend. I'm feeling a little bit better. Hopefully by the next time we record, I'll be completely back to normal. But good job, University Health in Lakewood. That was probably the best emergency room experience I've had.
I love it when you go into an experience. So every once in a while, it's just part of the human experience. You're going to have a bad day, right? Like for me a while back, it was my car was broken into. Mike has to go to the emergency room. Those are bad days for people. Your car breaks down, whatever. Those are bad days. You love it when the people you have to interact with on those bad days are competent, are kind, are compassionate, right? Like that makes a huge difference in whether or not the day's going to get worse, right? And so it's great to hear that that you had that experience at this place where you're having a rough day if you have to go in there, right? But the fact that they're not going to make it worse, they're actually going to make it a little better. That's huge for me. Huge. Mm-hmm. If you want to make your day better also, you can look into the thing that I'm going to talk about, which is this book that I've been listening to. Mike, have you ever read this book? I feel like you've told me about something like it.
I have not read this book. I read a biography of John Muir. And so he's a part of this.
Okay, so this book is called Guardians of the Valley, John Muir and the Friendship That Saved Yosemite by a guy named Dean King. I've been listening to it as an audiobook, and it is wonderful, right? Like it's wonderful because does a great job sort of telling the story of John Muir and this person who actually, I don't recall this other person's name, but he was John Muir's essentially like editor, I think, or ran a magazine or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. John Muir, the guy he wrote for. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember his name now. But they essentially led this campaign to save Yosemite and turn it into a national state park, and not let privatized interest come in and essentially just destroy it for their own profit, right? And so if you don't know, John Muir is like the father of conservation in America. He is like this big time environmentalist and like philosopher and like scientist and that sort of thing.
They call him the father of the national parks.
Right. They call him the father of the national parks.
He's got a super interesting life, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. They started the Sierra Club, very famous as like an outdoors person, like spent so much time outdoors and essentially just live. And that's one of the reasons I love this book is you get to sort of learn some of the history of his life, as well as like learning about the people who would come to this place to sort of see him and experience it and the ways in which that changed people's views on what they should be doing and what we should be doing as a country. Right. Like, and so one of the good aspects so there are so many good aspects of this book. Like I love the description of the nature and stuff like that. It makes me feel like I'm in it and all that sort of thing. But also I love them sort of expressing and explaining and describing a time when people's minds could be changed, right? Like that is actually very refreshing to me to read about a time when people's minds could be changed, when people were open to persuasion via experiencing something that they'd never experienced before or hearing a point of view they've never heard before. It seems like today that doesn't exist in the world, and it certainly doesn't exist to the degree that it used to. And I think that's a problem. But what I get from this book is not just this amazing description of this very beautiful place that just makes you want to go there immediately. Like I'd pack a bag right now and just start going if I could, right? Like, but also you just get a different sense. It's like it transports you back in time to when discourse was just very different. And I like that a lot. And so if you get a chance, check it out. Guardians of the Valley, John Muir and the Friendship That Saved Yosemite. It's a great as an audiobook because the narrator is very good as well. And so, yeah, I highly recommend. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you're checking out that Substack to see if you want to become a subscriber, royalsweekly.substack.com. We'll be back again next week to talk more Royals baseball. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.